As I said in the jobs for February, the skies here in Norfolk threw absolutely everything at us. And February, of course, blew out with a big bang with storms Dudley, Eunice and Franklin. Hi, my name is Barry, and in this video we should be looking at jobs for the month for March. Now, as I said earlier, we had those storms at the end of the month and we certainly weren't immune to them. And you can probably see if the camera pans over there, we've lost our polytunnel and one of our cloches. So that still needs sorting out, doesn't it, Poppy? So the question is, what can we do in March? Weeds will be starting to grow in the no-dig garden, principally because if you spread compost over the surface back in the autumn and not all the weed seeds were killed, they will now be starting to think about germinating, and also any seeds that may have blown in from neighbouring plots. Also as well, grasses will be beginning to grow, and your trowel is one of your best friends during this period. And you can see even in our no-dig garden we still have the odd weed and grass that's trying to grow through. All of this land that we're growing our vegetables on was, before we got here, it was all laid to grass. And with your trowel, you just dig down and get most of that root out so that it doesn't become invasive and start to cover your beds. And then the annuals, well, you can just pull those out. Doing this job during March and getting on top of that will ensure that you won't have masses of weeds during the summer months. Indeed, in the no-dig garden you tend to get less weeds during the summer and autumn months. It's generally the spring, as I say, when you spread your compost mulch, and any weed seeds that haven't been killed during that composting process, they will be starting to push their way through. So if you get on top of them now, you'll have very little trouble during the next few months. And as usual, of course, as land becomes bare and you've taken your final harvests, you want to be putting a fresh layer of compost on top of your soil. And if you're like us, where you're in your second year, it'll be a 1 to 2 inch layer of compost to feed that soil for the rest of the year. If you did spread your compost last autumn, you've got some areas where you spread it last autumn and there are still a few lumps about. By now, the frosts and winds, they should have started to break those down. So you can use a fork or a rake just to tap those lumps down, giving you a nice smooth surface in readiness to sow your seeds. So what seeds can we sow for the month of March? Well, all of the seeds that you saw us sow in last month's video, jobs for February, they can still be sown during March. And if you're not sure what we said you could sow during then go back to that video and have a look at that. Also, you can also be sowing peas, celery, celeriac and leeks. And as usual, throughout the month of March, we'll be filming ourselves sowing those seeds. So if you're first time to gardening or you're a beginner, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because I'm sure you won't want to miss that, and then you can see exactly how we start those seeds off. So during the month of March, it does offer us the chance to start sowing seed outdoors. And during this month you can sow onion seeds, you can sow carrots, although we tend to sow our carrots towards the end of March when the soil has warmed up just that little bit more. You can also be sowing parsnips, but if you remember, I said in the February jobs that we don't actually sow our parsnips here in Norfolk until April. Now that's because the soil hasn't really warmed up enough here. We have quite cold clay soil, and if it rains a lot during March and it's very cold, those seeds are just going to sit there and rot. So there's no benefit to us in actually planting our parsnip seeds. But if you live in an area where it's a little bit warmer and your rainfall is lower and you're not going to get so many hard frosts, then you can think about sowing your parsnips during the month of March. If it were me, I would advise you to sow them toward the end of March. Also, you can be sowing onion sets. I would always advise that you sow them after the spring equinox, so after the clocks go forward, and then they will stand less chance of bolting. Now, early March is probably the last opportunity to plant garlic. You can see all our garlic is already through and growing away nicely. You can also plant out your shallots this month too. If you want to be growing shallots, they'll be fine. Again, we choose to plant ours earlier and they're well on the way and growing. March is also a time when potatoes can be planted out, but always remember you need to know when your last frost date is. And when that last frost date is will determine exactly when you plant your potatoes. So for example, our last frost date is predicted to be mid-April. So around about mid-March will be when we will be planting our potatoes out, because they will take 4 to 5 weeks before they break through the surface and are then vulnerable to frosts. Now, of course, last frost days don't mean to say that you won't get frost after that time. You can still get them. Indeed, a couple of years ago, we were hit by a very late and hard frost right at the beginning of May. But that's the chance the gardener takes. You can wait to plant your potatoes a little bit later. You don't have to plant them then, but we look to plant ours around about mid-March. So what can we be harvesting during this period? Well, we planted up our spinach. We must have put that in last September, right at the very beginning. And we had a good harvest of those up until November. And then from November until now, we've had quite tiny harvest, but nevertheless, because we have several plants, you still get some fresh spinach. But you can see now that they're now starting to produce nice fresh leaves, ready for us to be able to eat. And the real benefit of planting this in September is, as I say, you get a much longer harvesting season. So we had some nice harvests off this during October right up to November. Small little harvest, but very welcome over the December and January period. And now it's growing nice leaves, and we'll be able to pick and eat this spinach now right up until June, when it will decide to think it wants to go and flower. And I'll be able to twist these out, and in this particular part of the ground, this is where we'll be growing our leeks. Also in the garden, we still have kale to harvest. This dwarf curly kale is actually doing okay, and there's still plenty of harvest to come from this. However, you'll probably notice that on the Cavolo Nero, it's deciding that it wants to go to seed and make its flower. So there won't be many more to come from those. For us, at least, we're going to be taking our last harvests of sprouts. You can see there are still 1 or 2 on there. We should probably be eating those today, fresh out of the garden. And to think that we're still eating sprouts and still picking them on the 1st of March, and bearing in mind these plants we've been harvesting sprouts from these since November. So it's quite a long harvest window. And this year, because I made a mistake during last year, I didn't quite sow enough seed, and we actually only had 5 plants. We normally grow 6 plants. And yet they've still given us a nice bountiful harvest. And you'll notice that, some of these have gone over. That was due to the storms that came through right at the end of February, which is a bit of a shame, but those are the breaks when you're gardening. Still carrots to harvest. You can see there we still have some cabbages left to harvest. And again, being a really tall crop, the cloche went right over on those purple sprouting broccoli and pushed them right over, pushed them out of the ground. So we're probably going to be looking at our final harvest from those, and then twisting those out of the ground, and then prepping that ground ready where we're going to be planting some Charlotte potatoes. But all of you lucky people that planted varieties like claret, That's going to be coming into harvest toward the end of this month and into April, and you'll be enjoying your purple sprouting broccoli just like we've been enjoying ours through December, January and February. I hope you've enjoyed this video today and it's given you a few ideas of what you can be doing in the month of March. And if you've done anything different or you've got something to add, please pop it down in the comments below. We really do love getting your comments and we really do appreciate them all. Now, on a personal note, the month of February has been really good for myself and Poppy and Mrs. W. We've seen our subscribers actually more than double over the last month, and we thank you very much for that, and it does give us a lot of confidence in what we're doing and that hopefully we are putting out the right content. Many of you have said hello, and we love you to do that because we love getting your comments. But for those of you that have maybe subscribed and not had anything to say yet, please say hello and let us know who you are. Let us know where you are in the world and what you're up to, what you're doing in your garden, because it's only by sharing these experiences that we learn from each other. I certainly don't know everything. I'm just giving you the benefit of my advice that myself and Mrs. W have picked up over the years that we've been vegetable gardening and growing our flowers. We shall be filming the seeds that we sow, the ones that we've mentioned. You will see that done, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button and press that notification bell so you know when they're uploaded, especially if you're new to gardening, because it will give you a few tips and help you along your way. We shall see you on the next video.